Alien women paid for his touch, but they ended up needing his love. He was just a cargo pilot until alien queens begged for his touch. It started as a routine delivery run. Commander Mason Holt, a rugged ex-Navy pilot from Earth, had flown through dozens of star systems, delivered everything from battle armor to bionutrients. But when he accepted a contract to drop biotech parts at a quiet outpost on the far edge of the galaxy, he didn't expect much. Just another landing, unload the crates, and fly off. He didn't expect Valeria 6. The moment he stepped off his ship, everything changed. The air was sweet, warmer than he was used to. And the women? Alien, yes, but stunning. Tall, elegant, skin like moonlight, flowing robes that shimmered with every movement. Their eyes followed him, wide and curious. Their lips parted just slightly as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. He was used to being looked at. He had the build of a soldier, broad chest, strong arms, a confident walk. But this was different. Then she appeared. High Counselor Cyrene, taller than the others, dressed in royal blue silk that hugged her body like it was made just for her. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with something else. She welcomed him politely, but she didn't smile. Not at first. She just stared at him. "You are human?" she asked, her voice like warm wind. "Last time I checked," Mason replied with a half grin, adjusting the strap of his cargo bag. She stepped closer, close enough for him to smell the subtle, spicy scent of her skin. Her gaze dropped just for a moment to his arms, his hands, his chest. "Forgive me," she said. "You are larger than we expected." Mason blinked. Thanks?" She looked away quickly, flustered. It was the first crack in her calm. Then she gestured for him to follow. As they walked through the marble halls of the Valarian temple, Mason noticed something strange. All the women they passed looked at him the same way. Not just curiosity, need, hunger, a silent desperation. Finally, Cyrene led him into a quiet chamber lined with smooth crystal panels and glowing plants. She turned to him, folding her hands. "Our world is dying, Commander Holt," she said softly. "Our women can no longer produce milk. Our bodies have grown weak. We tried machines, medicines, but nothing works, not until your kind arrived." "My kind?" "Humans," she whispered. "Your biology. It stimulates something in us. Our glands react, our milk flows. No machine has done what your touch can do." Mason frowned. "Hold on. Are you saying you want me to help us?" she said, stepping closer. "Not just with machines, with contact." He opened his mouth, closed it again. His heart was racing. This wasn't a job. This was something else entirely. "I'm not a doctor," he said finally. "No, you're something better," she murmured. "You are human." Her hand brushed his. Just a brush. But it sent a jolt through him like a live wire. Her pupils dilated, her breath hitched. Mason stared at her. Her face was calm again, but he could see the tension in her jaw, the flutter in her throat. She was trying to stay professional, but she wanted him, badly. "Why me?" he asked. "You were the first human to step on this soil in 50 years, she said. "And your body reacts to ours in a way the others didn't. You are more." He should have said no. He should have backed away, handed over the cargo, and flown off, but he didn't. He reached for her hand, held it gently. Her skin was soft, warm, almost too delicate for someone so powerful. She looked up at him, her lips parted slightly, waiting. "I'll help," he said quietly. "However I can." She exhaled, long and slow, like she'd been holding her breath for years. Then, finally, she smiled. Not a formal smile, not polite, but real. "Thank you," she said. "You have no idea what this means to us." As she led him deeper into the temple, toward chambers he hadn't seen yet, Mason had the sudden feeling that he'd just stepped into something far bigger than he realized. And from the way Cyrene's fingers tightened around his, he knew she wasn't just bringing him into a mission, she was bringing him into her world. Mason followed Cyrene through a narrow archway carved from glowing silverstone, the walls humming with a soft pulse like a heartbeat. The chamber beyond was quiet, dimly lit, and strangely warm. The air smelled faintly of honey and something deeper, something instinctive, fertile, alive. Inside, several Valerian women stood waiting. Each of them wore flowing fabric that barely concealed their curves, and each turned to him as if they'd been waiting for him all their lives, their eyes locked onto his body, their gazes full of silent questions and aching curiosity. "This is the initiation room," Cyrene said, her voice low, almost reverent. "It is where our ancestors once went to be prepared for bonding. It has not been used in a generation." Mason looked around, trying to ignore the way one of the women tilted her head, licking her lips just slightly. "I'm guessing I'm not here to fix a broken scanner," he muttered. Cyrene smiled, walking in front of him. She turned, letting her robe fall from one shoulder, revealing the smooth, pale curve of her skin. "You are here," she said, "to give us what no machine can, what no Valerian male has been able to provide in a century. Stimulation, restoration, touch. You awaken our glands, but more than that, you stir something deeper." Mason swallowed. "And you're sure this is safe? For us?" she asked, taking a step closer. "Yes. For you? Only if you can handle intense gratitude." There was laughter in her voice now, but her eyes stayed serious. Her hand rose to rest on his chest, fingers splayed across his heartbeat. She felt the warmth of his skin through the thin shirt, and her breath caught again. "Commander Holt," she said, her voice dropping, "this is not only about milk, it's about survival. It's about bonding. We do not take what we do not intend to keep." His heart skipped. "You mean, if you give yourself to us," she said, "you will not be a visitor. You will be chosen, you will be ours." Behind them, the other women began to move, softly lighting candles along the walls. The glow filled the room with an amber hue, casting their figures into warm silhouettes. A hush fell. A ceremony had begun. Cyrene led him to a platform covered in soft velvet moss. She motioned for him to sit, and he did, unsure of what to expect. One of the younger women approached. She knelt in front of him, lifting his hand in hers. Her touch was reverent, as if he were sacred. Her fingers trailed along his palm, then up to his forearm, tracing the veins like pathways on a map. "She's studying your muscle density," Cyrene explained. "Our species lost the ability to produce physical strength generations ago, but your body," her eyes scanned him again, slowly, "was clearly made for endurance, for performance." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You mean I passed inspection?" Cyrene stepped closer and reached behind her back. Her robe slipped from her shoulders and pooled at her feet. "You passed," she whispered. "And now, we begin." She straddled his lap slowly, deliberately, her skin glowing against his. Every Valerian in the room bowed their heads, acknowledging the act, not as something taboo but sacred. Her body was light, her movements elegant, but Mason could feel the tremble beneath her calm. She was no stranger to control, but this was vulnerability. "I can feel it already," she breathed, her forehead resting gently against his. "The pressure in my chest, the awakening." Mason's hands came to rest on her hips. He could feel the heat of her, the rhythm of her breathing. It was the beginning of something neither of them could fully explain. "You're not just helping us," Cyrene said, her voice quivering. "You're changing us." And as the first drop of warm, silvery milk formed on her breast, catching the candlelight like a gem, Mason realized this wasn't a simple mission anymore, it was a rebirth for her. For them. And maybe for him too. The chamber was quiet, but the silence pulsed with something electric. As Cyrene rested against him, Mason could feel the heat of her skin, the way her body responded to his touch like she'd been waiting centuries for it. And maybe she had. All around them, the other Valerian women watched, not with jealousy, but reverence, as if witnessing a sacred rite finally fulfilled. Cyrene's lips brushed against his ear, her voice barely a whisper. "You should know. Once a Valerian is milked by a mate, it forms a bond. Physical, emotional, permanent." Mason's hands froze. "You're saying this is forever?" She met his gaze, her silver blue eyes full of longing and something deeper. "Only if you want it to be." He didn't answer with words. His hands moved gently, cupping the swell of her breast, firm yet delicate, and as he touched her, she bloomed, her back arched, her chest rising into his palms like she'd been starved of touch her whole life. A soft cry escaped her lips, part pleasure, part relief. And then it began. From her nipples, warm, glistening milk began to flow, slow at first, then stronger. Silky, opalescent, and sweet-scented. The other women gasped softly. Some placed hands to their own chests, instinctively responding to Cyrene's release. One of them whispered, "It's real. He's real." Cyrene trembled against him, her body trembling with emotion and sensation. "It hasn't happened in decades," she breathed. "Not like this. Not naturally." Mason held her steady, helping guide the flow into a shallow ceremonial bowl placed nearby. He couldn't take his eyes off her. She was glowing, literally. Her skin shimmered faintly, a trait of Valerian females when in deep arousal and connection. "Is it always like this?" he asked, his voice low. She shook her head slowly. "No. Only with a true match." The room began to warm, not from technology but from the shared hum of awakening female bodies responding to him. Some clutched their robes tighter, some bit their lips. One or two quietly left the chamber overwhelmed. Cyrene, still in his lap, leaned her forehead against his. Her breathing was fast but not panicked. She looked alive. "You don't understand what you've done," she whispered. "You've reignited a fire we thought lost forever. Our ancestors called it the sacred burn. We believed it was myth." Mason swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "And what do you call it now?" She smiled faintly. "I call it mine." There was no doubt now. This wasn't just about biology. Something deeper was forming between them. Something ancient. Primordial. Cyrene shifted slightly in his lap, the softness of her body brushing his. She wasn't trying to seduce him, not anymore. She didn't have to, he was already hers. Then the door opened and a new figure stepped inside. A younger Valerian, flanked by two guards. She was radiant, eyes sharp like Cyrene's, but her body shook with weakness. "This is my niece," Cyrene explained gently. "She has not produced milk in 3 years. Her condition is critical." The girl stepped forward, unfastening her robe with trembling fingers. "May I be next?" she asked, her voice breaking. Cyrene stood slowly, her legs still unsteady from the intensity of her release. She looked to Mason. "Will you help her too?" Mason looked at the girl, pale, fragile, hope flickering in her eyes like a candle in the wind. He rose, nodded once, and held out his hand. "Let's try." She came to him with trust and fear braided together. But as he touched her, gently, respectfully, her body responded, slow at first, then faster. Her cheeks flushed, her breathing deepened, and when the milk came, she wept. Tears of relief, of life returning. The other women around them murmured prayers. They knelt. One began to sing a hymn in soft melodic tones that echoed through the chamber like a forgotten lullaby. Cyrene watched it all with wide eyes and a trembling smile. Her people were changing, healing because of him. And Mason? He was changing too. In that moment, he realized he hadn't just arrived on Valaria 6 to drop off cargo. He'd arrived to become part of something much bigger. Not just a partner, not just a healer, but a symbol, a savior, a mate. And somewhere, deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. That night, the stars above Valaria 6 burned brighter than Mason had ever seen. Or maybe it just felt that way. Everything felt sharper now. His senses, his thoughts, even the beat of his heart. He stood alone on the temple's high balcony, shirt half open, the cool night air brushing his skin. Below, the city glowed in soft blues and golds, its curved spires humming with ancient energy. He had touched something today, not just the women, something sacred, something alive. He wasn't sure what that made him. Footsteps behind him were soft but certain. Cyrene. She came to stand beside him, draped, in a midnight blue robe that clung to her like water. Her bare feet made no sound on the polished stone. She didn't speak for a long time, neither did he. Finally, she said, "We have long believed that Valarian males grew too weak, too disconnected from the body. That intimacy had become mechanical, expected, our passion dulled, and then you arrived." Mason glanced at her. "Did I break the machine?" She gave a soft laugh, the kind that curled around his spine and made him shiver. "You reminded us we were the machine." There was a pause. The wind carried the faint sounds of singing from the central temple dome. A prayer of renewal, she had told him earlier. A ritual not performed in 80 years. After the initiation, she continued, the others were affected. Many began lactating within hours. One even collapsed from overstimulation. We've had to reopen the ancient resting pools to calm them. Mason turned to her, brow raised. "Is that a thank you or a warning?" She tilted her head, eyes glowing silver in the starlight. "It's a proposition." She stepped in closer, slipping her hand into his, intertwining their fingers. "Commander, Holt, Mason," she whispered. "I have studied every species in this quadrant. None of them react to us as you do. No one has ever made us respond like you can. It is not just physical. It's primal, evolutionary." "And what exactly do you want from me?" he asked, though he already knew. She pressed his hand to her chest. Her skin was warm, heartbeat steady beneath his palm. "I want to bond." His breath caught. Valarian bonding wasn't just symbolic. It was biological, hormonal. Once bonded, her body would sync with his on a level deeper than species. They would feel each other's emotions, cravings, pleasure, and the bond could only be broken by death. "I barely know you," Mason said, not pulling away. Cyrene's gaze never left his. "But your body already knows mine, and mine knows yours. Our milk carries the signal now. If I drink yours, the bond completes." That stopped him cold. "Wait, my milk?" She gave a slow smile. "It's not just us who change, Mason. Exposure to our touch has triggered changes in you too. Your glands, human as they are, have begun to respond. That strength you feel, the heat inside you, that's not adrenaline. It's adaptation." He stared at her, mouth open. "You're saying I'm lactating?" "Not yet," she said, smirking. "But soon. The bond accelerates it. Your body will produce. We will feed from each other, sustain each other." Mason stepped back, trying to think, but his body buzzed with energy. A warm thrum in his chest, a strange tightness in his spine. Was she right? Was he changing? "You're serious?" he asked. She nodded. "We Valarians don't mate lightly, but once we bond, we become partners in every sense. Mates, lovers, family." Mason let out a long breath. He thought of Earth, how alone he'd felt, drifting from job to job, watching the stars go by from a cockpit window. No ties, no meaning, just motion. And now, he looked at her. This luminous, brilliant, wildly sensual being, and felt something raw stir deep inside him. Something real. Slowly, he stepped forward. Their chests touched, her breath hitched. Then, "Drink," he said quietly. Her eyes widened, then softened. She leaned up, kissed his neck, once, twice, and then bit, gently, right where shoulder met throat. Mason gasped. A heat like liquid fire surged through him. His veins tingled. His skin prickled, and when she pulled back, licking a drop of blood from her lips, her eyes shone like twin moons. "It is done," she said, voice hoarse. "You are mine, and I am yours." Suddenly his body ached, with hunger, with heat, with need. Not just for her skin, her breath, her mouth, but for everything she was, her mind, her people, her future. He grabbed her, lifted her easily, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, gasping as he carried her inside, back to the silk-draped chamber, where the real bonding would begin. Tonight, he would learn what it meant to be more than a man. He was a mate now, a vessel, a legend, and by morning, he would be Valerian. By morning, Mason was no longer just human. He woke beneath a canopy of golden silk, wrapped in the scent of Cyrene's skin, her limbs tangled with his like ivy on stone. The room still glowed faintly, residual energy from the bonding ritual. It had not been just physical, it had been transformational. His chest ached, but not with pain, pressure, fullness. Something inside him had shifted. Cyrene stirred beside him. She smiled, soft and knowing, and brushed her fingers along his jaw. "It's starting," she whispered. Mason blinked. "What is?" She sat up, pushing the sheets down to his waist. Her gaze dropped to his chest, and her smile deepened. He looked down. 2 faint, swollen ridges had formed under his skin, just below the collarbone, right over his heart. The area was warm to the touch, sensitive. "You weren't kidding about the changes," he said, voice rough with disbelief. "I never joke about biology," she said, eyes twinkling. "You saying I'm about to become a milk source?" Cyrene leaned over him, her breasts brushing his skin, and whispered against his lips. "You already are." She guided his hand to her chest. The moment he touched her nipple, she gasped, her whole body reacting like lightning had struck. Milk flowed, soft and warm, coating his fingers. And then, he felt it, a tightening in his own chest. A strange pulse, like his body wanted to respond. He pulled back, breath quickening. "Cyrene, what the hell is happening to me?" "You're sinking," she said. "The bond is taking root. You gave your body to mine. Now mine gives back. You won't just feed me. You'll feel what I feel. Crave what I crave." He sat up, stunned. "That's intense." She nodded. "And permanent." They dressed in silence, but the tension between them buzzed like an electric field. Every time she moved, he felt it. Every time she glanced at him, his heart thudded faster. He wasn't just with her now. He was part of her. As they stepped into the great hall, the temple was alive with movement. Valerian women, young and old, moved with newfound energy. Mason could feel them reacting to him, not just with desire, but reverence. A line of them waited. Cyrene explained, "Word has spread. You're the first male in Valerian history to reverse gland dormancy. The others, they wish to be touched, guided, awakened." Mason blinked. "I'm not a priest." "No," she said. "You're something rarer. You're a father of rebirth." The first in line was a woman named Ilani, tall, silver-haired, and silent. She had not lactated in 16 years. Mason stepped toward her. She trembled. He raised his hand slowly, touched her collarbone, and whispered, "Just breathe." Her body arched at his touch. Her lips parted. Her breasts flushed with color, and then milk flowed, clear and sweet and unstoppable. She burst into tears. Others wept with her. They weren't crying because of pleasure. They were crying because they were alive again. Cyrene watched, arms crossed over her chest, a smile tugging at the edge of her lips. But Mason saw something else in her eyes. Not jealousy. Something deeper. Longing. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the chamber emptied, she pulled him into a side room. Dark, quiet, lined with soft moss and scent-rich flowers. She didn't speak. She just kissed him, harder than before. Needier. And when they broke apart, her voice was shaking. "I don't want to share you." He froze. "You are part of my people now," she said. "But I want to be more than that. I want to be your only." Mason reached up, brushing her cheek. "Cyrene, I didn't come here looking for love, but I found it, you." Her lips trembled. "Then let's make it real. Complete the bond." "I thought we already did." "Not fully," she whispered. "There's one more step." She dropped to her knees before him, not in submission but in reverence. She kissed the swelling gland on his chest, and then she nursed. It was gentle at first, then desperate. Mason's vision swam. Pleasure, pain, heat, release. His milk, new, potent, laced with human DNA, entered her body. Cyrene's eyes rolled back, her entire body convulsing with ecstasy. She gasped, cried out, clutched him like she was drowning, and when she was done, her belly glowed faintly. He stared. "What is that?" She looked down, breathless, her eyes filled with tears. "It's fertilization," she whispered. "You didn't just activate my glands, Mason. You seeded me." He couldn't speak. "You're not just part of our future now," she said. "You are our future." And somewhere deep in Mason's chest, just below the gland still tingling from her touch, he felt it too. He wasn't a pilot anymore. He was a creator, a father, a legend, and Cyrene, she was his everything, forever. The news spread through Valaria 6 faster than light. Cyrene was with child, a bonded child, a hybrid, the first true union between a human and Valerian in known galactic history. Mason couldn't walk through the temple halls without being stopped. Some touched his arm, others bowed their heads. A few even asked to touch his chest, reverently placing their palms over his newly developed gland as if it held the secrets of the stars. It was strange, humbling, and overwhelming. He was still trying to figure out what he was now, half technician, half miracle, fully exhausted. Cyrene handled it better. She was glowing, literally and figuratively. Her skin had taken on a radiant shimmer that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the new life forming inside her. She walked taller, spoke bolder, and stayed closer to Mason than ever before. But it wasn't all worship and bliss. There were whispers now, low murmurs in the outer chambers, conversations that stopped when Mason entered the room. Not everyone was thrilled about what he and Cyrene had done. Not everyone welcomed change. The High Matrons, a group of elder Valerian women who maintained cultural traditions, summoned Cyrene to a private council. Mason offered to come. She kissed him softly and said, "If I fall, I want you to rise." He waited outside the council chamber, heart pounding like it used to before battle. The hours passed. Then, the doors opened. Cyrene stepped out, composed but pale. She took Mason's hand in silence and led him away from the temple, through the crystal gardens, and up a ridge that overlooked the twin moons of Valaria. Only when they were alone did she speak. "They've given me a choice," she said. "Step down as High Counselor, or dissolve the bond." Mason blinked. "Dissolve the... That's not possible. We bonded. You're carrying my... They say my judgment is clouded, that I've weakened our purity, that I've opened our bloodline to outside corruption." She turned to him. "They see you as the infection." He stared at her, stunned. "And what do you see?" Her jaw tightened. "I see the cure." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Then don't back down." Cyrene looked at him, tears brimming. "If I fight, I may lose everything. My seat, my home, even my place in the Song of Names. But if I surrender you, I lose me." Mason took her hands. "We didn't do this for power or politics. We did this because we found each other, because we created something that was never supposed to exist, and that scares them." She looked down at her belly, glowing with life. "I won't choose fear," she whispered. "Not now, not ever." And with that, they descended back into the city, hand in hand, skin to skin, unafraid. What happened next would become the stuff of legend. Cyrene, against all counsel and tradition, stood before the entire temple assembly, with Mason beside her. She told the story, every detail, the failed treatments, the fading fertility, the discovery of human touch, the birth of the bond, and then she turned, took Mason's hand and laid it on her belly. "This man has not corrupted our blood," she said. "He has saved it." There was silence. Long, heavy, suffocating. Then an elder stood, a woman named Kailari, the oldest living matron, her hair like woven snow. She stepped forward and knelt. "I lost 3 daughters to gland collapse," she said, voice shaking. "I thought I would die with no lineage, but I watched my great niece nurse today, and I wept, because her milk ran warm again." She reached out and touched Mason's hand. "Let them call you outsider," she said, "but I will call you son." The silence shattered. Applause rang through the hall, not wild or frantic, but steady, powerful, acknowledging not just victory, but rebirth. In the weeks that followed, Valeria began to change. The temples reopened their bonding chambers. Human volunteers arrived, carefully screened, reverently trained. Mason oversaw their integration, acting not as a superior, but as a brother, and Cyrene. She stepped down from her seat, not in disgrace, but in freedom. She chose instead to lead the new bonding accord, an initiative to guide and protect all future unions between Valerians and humans. They moved into the high gardens where light flowers grew and bloom year-round. Mason built a small home by hand, with repurposed starship metal and soft stone bricks. It was crooked, asymmetrical, beautiful. Their baby grew stronger by the day. One night, lying together beneath a glowing canopy, Cyrene traced circles on his bare chest. "He kicks when you speak," she whispered. "That's because I've got a very commanding voice." Mason grinned. She laughed. "Or maybe he knows you're going to teach him how to fly." He kissed her forehead, then her lips. "I'll teach him everything," he murmured, "except how to be ordinary." And as the moons rose high and the winds carried their laughter across the stars, Mason Holt knew he hadn't just become part of Valeria, he'd made it a part of him, forever. The day their child was born, the sky over Valeria 6 turned a color it hadn't in centuries, crimson gold. Ancient texts spoke of it, the dawning sky, a celestial sign reserved for moments when the fabric of Valerian destiny changed. It hadn't been seen since before the collapse of the fertility line. Now it burned above the temple spires like the galaxy itself had paused to witness something sacred. Mason stood outside the birthing chamber, pacing. His palms were slick. His heart pounded like thunder in his ears. He'd faced space battles, engine fires, even an asteroid field blindfolded once in a Bardair. But nothing terrified him like this moment. From inside, he could hear Cyrene's breathing, deep, rhythmic, powerful. She wasn't just giving birth, she was rewriting history. The temple healers surrounded her, guiding her with chants older than language. The glow beneath her skin pulsed stronger with every contraction, her body responding to ancient instincts Valerians thought long lost. Mason wasn't allowed in, not during the sacred emergence. But then, the chamber doors burst open. A young priestess stepped out, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. She's calling for you," the girl whispered. "No one has ever done that. She says, the child will not come without you." Without hesitation, Mason ran. He stepped into the chamber, and time stopped. Cyrene lay reclined on a bed of luminous moss, her robes open, her skin coated in sweat and starlight. She reached out with a single trembling hand. "Come," she breathed. "He wants to feel you near." Mason dropped to his knees beside her, pressing his forehead to hers. He took her hand, kissed it. He could feel the pressure in her body, the final push building like a tidal wave. "You've got this," he whispered. "You're the strongest being I've ever known." She laughed through her pain, a wild, beautiful sound. "I made you lactate. I better be." The chamber pulsed, and then a cry. Not weak, not shrill, but powerful. The child slipped into the world, glowing faintly, his skin a soft blush of Cyrene's silvery tone and Mason's warm hue. His eyes opened immediately, staring up at them, deep, stormy gray, just like his father. The healers gasped. No Valerian child had ever opened their eyes so quickly. Cyrene took him into her arms, and Mason wrapped himself around both of them, pressing kisses to their foreheads, his eyes wet with something he wouldn't call tears, but was. "We did it," she whispered, cradling the future of two species in her arms. "He's ours." Outside, the chimes of the city began to ring, echoing across domes, towers, and distant hills. Not as alarm, not as ritual, but celebration. The people of Valaria gathered in the plazas, the crystal gardens, and temple halls, holding each other, weeping, singing the old songs. For the first time in generations, a new verse was added to the Song of Names. He came not from the stars to conquer us, but to touch what we had forgotten. He brought warmth where cold ruled and milk where none flowed, and from his seed the dawn returned. In the weeks that followed, the child named Kaelin became a symbol, not just of life, but of unity. A generation of women came forward to bond with human mates, some for love, some for healing, others for hope. Mason stayed at Cyrene's side, raising Kaelin beneath the rising twin moons. He taught him how to speak both Valerian and Earth English, how to fly a training craft by age 5, and how to mix the perfect fusion stew with spicy earth tomatoes and glowing Valerian nectar root. Kaelin had Cyrene's grace, Mason's stubbornness, and something new, an ease between worlds. Years passed, and one morning, as Kaelin played by the garden stream, Cyrene leaned against Mason, her hand over his heart, right above the fated gland that had changed both their fates. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked. Mason looked out over the hills, lush, blooming, alive with color and song. "No," he said. "Earth never gave me you, or him, or this." She smiled. "Then stay with me, until the stars burn out." He kissed her hand, then her cheek, then her lips. "I've already decided," he whispered. "I'm not just staying, I'm rooted." And as their son's laughter rang across the stones and the flowers bent toward the sound, Mason knew. He hadn't just landed on an alien world. He had planted love in alien soil and watched it grow into a legacy that would outlive stars. The end. Or rather, the beginning of something eternal.